I guess you know what comes across my mind. Murder. Just murder.
A lot of ladies think he's attractive.
Very nice, very well spoken.
This is what I do with women, you know? I use my charm, use my good looks. I'm like a lion. You're the prey, I can sense it.
I stand here today to announce the indictment of Wade Wilson for the murders of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz.
Both of them had been strangled. The last person that they encountered was Mr. Wade Wilson.
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
I choked her out so she couldn't breathe anymore. I was on a rampage at this point.
He's still pulling the strings from a jail cell. He's got an army of wives. That's all he's ever wanted.
To advocate for someone because you think he's handsome.
A rage overcomes me. Just kill. When I get that way, I become the devil.
I'm gonna be honest with you, son. Everybody in the state thinks you're a monster.
True crime just got darker. Catch the full episode on the link above. Subscribe to At Southern Sin today and hit the notification bell for more live original episodes Wednesdays at 8 p.m.
I'm a bit lost. I'm a little bit lost. Not gonna lie, but he didn't. Glad he didn't. Delete this conversation. So wait. You want Keith, delete your conversation. You want Alex, delete your conversation. Later on, Keith, Dylan, delete everything. Why are we wiping away, just like tried to wipe away all the blood in the back of the car? Because he's committed a murder. November 7th, now a little bit before this, remember Carrie Barsha said that it has come out that they have a missing person, all right? They don't know if Demiah Appling is alive or dead. They right now are investigating a missing person and had a previous encounter. She said she went to Amy Valentine's house, then she went to meet Keith Anderson, and they're just collecting the phone data. They don't have it where they can read it yet. They've just collected things, all right? So they're just starting the investigation and collecting. The first encounter with Wayne, he says, I ain't seen her in months. Talking about Demiah. Don't know what you're talking about. Can't stand the girl. He's trying to distance himself as far as he can. November 7th, they have now gotten some phone data. And the phone data are some of the text messages we've seen from Keith Anderson's phone, which was that he was in the car, that Demiah Appling was in the car with Wayne. And now they have these text messages about this setup. They talked to Amy Valentine, who had told them that he had went over, and putting this together, they go back and they get a search warrant for his phone. So now they want to get the information off his phone. But guess what? He tells them, oh, my phone got wet, the one that I had on October 16th. It doesn't exist anymore. Not there anymore. This is my phone. Hands him a phone. All right? And they do a long interview that day with him. They think they've got the phone that's going to be able to have the data and bring everything up. We're going to find out the very next day they don't. But I'm going to play just a little blurb.
I have enough electronic data telling us there's more to the story. If something, whatever happened has already happened. Yes. You got it? So with that,
Can't run away from them.
with that,
I know what I'm saying.
Well, that
I don't
means-
know what else there is.
But we know you left with her. You were the last person that we can track her being with, and we know you were in a car, and we know y'all left here.
I didn't really leave with her here, or leave at all that night.
Who had your cell phone then?
My cell phone?
Yeah. Okay, then we already know that's not true, because you went to other areas of the county. We know exactly where you went that day.
why'd you go to your grandparents' house up in the hammock?
I didn't.
You went to the hammock.
Electronic data says you did, bud. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I didn't though, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Then who had your phone?
I should have my phone all night
Well,
with me, it's always on.
I did not go to the hammock. I had my phone on me. So we understand that the reliability of the data, which you're going to see, is that the phone is on him. But he did go to the hammock. But give me that we listen to a 39-minute round and round conversation. And you'll have that round and round conversation, the full extent that you listened to previous 2 days ago. There was a method to the madness. I did not go to the hammock. Yes, you did. No, I did not. I did not leave. Yes, you did. I did not leave. I'm telling you, I did not leave this place.
I have enough electronic data telling us how.
I'm telling you, I did not leave this place. But guess what? On November 8th, less than 24 hours later,
Down in the hammock, down next to Hardy's, or go down and take a walk.
And that's what you said, that's where you said y'all went the night after she left here.
Yes, it was during that night actually, because I was letting.
But you said y'all had sex for 20 minutes, you said it was like 9:30-ish, and then she left on foot, and then you and
Around
Dylan,
10 o'clock.
yeah, went to your grandma's house.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
that
because I was talking to my mom and figured out timelines for things, so aggravated and everything happens.
Yeah.
So when Demiah left here, you're saying now that you went to your mom's house, and then you went to the hammock.
I went to the hammock.
So you left straight from here and went to the hammock.
I went this way, and I went to the hammock. I took that highway right there, and that's how it was about as far as I remember.
And yesterday you said you didn't go to the hammock that night.
Yesterday I said
Yes, you
I didn't know.
didn't.
Yesterday I said I didn't know.
That is a straight up lie. We talked about it for over an hour. 2 hours, it was 2 hours and 15 minutes.
4 hours.
It wasn't 4 hours, it was
4 hours.
it-
I was absolutely correct.
Yep.
And you're sitting there trying to lie, saying I didn't say, I said that, but I did not. What I told you.
We went over it and you told us our cell phone records were wrong.
Yes, I told you I didn't know.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. I said I didn't know.
Hey,
I'm
LC,
supposed to remember a day like 16 different.
Is this that other one?
the same day you had sex with a juvenile, you can't remember that? I'm not the one that did it, you did.
Yeah.
He said he went to the hammock after Demiah left.
Hey,
I said, okay, so I said I didn't know. And then after.
TSJ, you wanna look through this
I
one?
went to my mother's, and I was talking to my mother, and I said, hey.
It's Max.
And I said, what happened?
the reason you heard 38 minutes of round and round and round, you went to the hammock. No, I didn't. You went to the hammock. No, I didn't. You went to the hammock. No, I didn't. So I could play the very next day. You know what? I went to the hammock. Because he's lying. Why would he? Why would he? Because he just committed a murder and they're now on to it. And why are they even there? Why are they even there that day? If you remember, it was because Now, April Glover, Special Agent April Glover from FDLE, has been pinging his phone and found out he did not give them the phone. And that phone was not disappeared and broken. It was in his house. And they used a specially trained dog. The dog finds the phone. They get the phone. And guess what? It's got a bunch of information on it. Information he definitely didn't want anybody to know about. That's why he didn't tell them the truth. That's why he didn't give it to them that day. And now he knows, man, they got something because they knew right where I went. And it went from I did not leave to okay, I left. So let's watch the players. What you're going to see right here, this is Keith. Showing up in the Wellburn area, if you don't know where that is, it's the Lake City area. So on the day before, he's there. This is where Waymore lives in this area. This is where Keith is on the 16th. They are still, he's in Lake City. I'm pointing this out, obviously he is not killed. He may have played an awful prank that turned out way worse than what he had imagined, but he is in Lake City. We're now on the 17th. He's still in Lake City. Now he's on the move. Remember, he was you guys were told that he's going to school, which is back in Cross City. So he was taken back on the 17th. And there he is. That's later in the day. This right here is at 1:20 p.m. He's back in Cross City. So during the time, Keith Anderson is in Lake City. Now let's talk about Dylan Mize. Sorry. I'm definitely not a PowerPoint expert. There you go. All right, yeah, Dylan Mize right here. This is where Dylan Mize is staying, Timbers. It's over Cross City side. There's Cross City right there. That's a very accurate hit. All right. Remember, the bigger the bubble, the bigger the cone, and they make the cones of a conservative or saying that it's definitely within this area. It might be at the bottom there, or it might be the top there, but it ain't Old Town. It's Cross City at the Timbers. Make some sort of call that's not as reliable. But he's somewhere in there. Still ain't made it back to where Waymore lives. Now he's over there. All right. Now this is 8 o'clock on October 16th. So 8 o'clock. You don't know your military time. After 12, you're going to have to start at it. Now he's starting to leave. He's driving up. And by 8:43, he's already well aware over to Hammond area. He's well away from Wayne. All right, we're getting hits by 9:21 over here. If you remember, Demiah Appling is still texting till 9:44. And who she's in the car with, which is not going to be anywhere near there, is going to be Wayne. Okay, so Dylan is not in the car. Dylan is not in the kill area. Dylan is back at the apartment. And remember the text messages we just went over where Wayne is texting him, waking him up and telling him, or whether he was awake or not, I'm not 100% sure, but he said, I got to put on clothes. I'll come and I'll see you. What have you been doing? Oh, returning the shovel. So that's what Wayne said to Dylan. So Dylan is not in the air. That's why I'm kind of making you watch these things just so we clear that up. Now 11:08 is when there starts to be the communication, and we're positive within that cone of where Dylan is. Once again, we're still in the timbers. This is at 127 getting a hit. May have moved outside, not sure, but he's still within that cone right there at the timbers. All right, it's right here that Dylan starts these, Wayne starts these texts. Remember, green on this right here is the Facebook messages of Dylan saying, "What are you doing? I'm returning a shovel. Yeah, let me put some clothes on," meaning I'm not with you. I'll go meet you. Dang, I got a lot to clean to Max's vehicle. Was that last text. Now you see him on the move, and guess where he is? Now he is at Waymore's house. Understand, it's already been texted. I got to clean what's in the back of the car. All right. He's there at 3:37 a.m. That's when Dylan is told about the body. Dylan goes back home. Key elements. Demiah is texting that she's in the car with Wayne while Dylan is in the timbers. All right. Her last texts that are still going on. Dylan is in the timbers. Dylan is asked to come over. When he's asked to come over. He's also, Wayne also says, I got a mess to clean in the back of Max's car. So the death already taken place. All of that taking place. It's not Dylan. All right, let's look at Waymore. Oh. All right, so this is Waymore's night. I'm going to point a few things out because I know it's going to be difficult. If you actually play it, you'll be able to see it. But I know some of you, this is tough. All right. We've got the Timbers apartments are over here. This is where Dylan stayed. We've got Alex's house is up here. All right. If you can see right there, that's where the victim is recovered. Very close to Alex's house. This is where the body is recovered. Down here, you've got Wayne's house and you've got Demiah's house, all right? Just give you a little bit of a reference. Oh, it's going to start it over for me. Oh, good deal.
Becker, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. I told you in opening statement that this world had failed Demiah Appling. It wasn't an attempt to demean her. It wasn't an attempt to lessen her humanity. It wasn't in any way an attempt to minimize what happened. I told you that because there were a long string of failures long before the events of October 16th and 17th. I was a little girl that this world had failed. She was already running wild at that point. You heard testimony from Keith Anderson that he was so concerned about her drug use that he had cut ties with her. And that's relevant, not to lessen her as a human being. She is a human being. I don't know if Mr. Thomas misunderstood me. That's to explain that when you start going down that path, unexpected and dangerous things happen. And that does not mean just because those things happen that they have proven that Mr. Gerhardt is the one that killed her. Somebody did kill Demiah Appling. There has never been any doubt about that. No one has ever disagreed with that. But the question you have to ask yourself is, has the state proven beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt who that was? Now let's start talking about some of the witnesses in this case. Clearly, there are a lot of individuals here who I don't think any reasonable person would leave their 14-year-old with. Amy Valentine is one of them. And she was the first person to testify in this trial. You may recall, and I'm going to remind you of this several times. I'm going to tell you right up at the beginning. The testimony in this trial comes from this chair. It doesn't come from Mr. Thomas and what he says he thinks happened. And most of what you heard during the closing argument immediately before I spoke was the opinion of Mr. Thomas and did not reflect the facts that were heard from that chair. And I don't ask you to take my word for that, okay? I rely on the evidence. And I want you to look at State's Exhibit number 4. This is the text conversation between Keith Anderson and Demiah Appling in and around the time that she is leaving Amy Valentine's home at 8:30 at night, a 14-year-old on foot alone. Now think about that. All right. She goes over there the first time. Keith Anderson has lured her over there. He is telling her in States 4 that she needs to come over there. Nowhere before she goes over there is there word one about Wayne. None. The only time during this entire conversation Wayne is even mentioned is after she is on her way back and Keith says, "You should have stayed over there. Wayne was going to take you." That's it. That's the only mention of Wayne anywhere in this conversation. You know what else is nowhere in this conversation? There's no mention of a gun anywhere in this conversation. That is something that Mr. Thomas has dreamed up because there is absolutely no evidence presented at any point during this trial that puts that .22 long rifle in that car. No witness testified to that. Not in a text message, not in live testimony, not even in changed live testimony, because we heard plenty of that, didn't we? I want to talk with you a little bit about some of the folks that testified in this trial. What we had was a parade on day one of folks who all knew that they had done the wrong thing by Demiah. A pack of potheads who couldn't keep their story straight, who changed their testimony over and over again. I think the one person whose testimony you can rely on in this case, you know who it was? Nancy Meyer, the person who said that Wayne didn't show up for work that night. I think that's probably true. She had no reason to lie. The rest of these folks, let's think about Keith. You know, Mr. Thomas told you during his closing argument, why does anyone delete a conversation? Why does anybody do that? He used it to suggest that Mr. Gerhardt was tampering with the evidence. Let's think about who was the one person in this entire case who you've seen evidence of deleting conversations. Was it Mr. Gerhardt? It was not. It's Mr. Anderson. He testified that he did that. He agreed with me that now we would never know what was in those text messages that he deleted. He's the one who unsent messages to Demiah after the state is saying that she was killed. He is also the one, if you look at this text string between him and Demiah, he is the one that tells her to get out. What's he mean by that? Does he mean get out of the car so I can shoot you? Could very well. Could very well. I suggest to you that perhaps the state at this point may be a little regretful of having put him on probation in order to testify here. Because what you heard from Todd Hoyle was not that he was continuously in well-room. That is not what you heard. There are 2 data points, and I encourage you to look at the information that's coming back with you. There are 2 data points on Keith Anderson. One of them is at 9:08, the night of the 16th. And the next one is not until 11 o'clock the next morning. So during the entire period of time, when all of this is supposed to have happened, Keith Anderson's whereabouts are unknown. There is no electronic data that will tell you where Keith Anderson was. Remember how I told you in opening statement that the state didn't have to provide a motive, but they surely have not. Have they provided a motive here? Keith Anderson had a motive. He's the only person in this case who made any threats of violence towards Demiah. Those are recorded in the conversations that have been introduced. You'll get to see those. Those are in State's Exhibit, I believe it's 32. It's a text string between him and Demiah. He's the one that lured her over here. He's the one telling her to get in the car. Nothing from Wayne about any of that stuff. That's all Keith. Every bit of it. 100%. The only motive that they can ascribe to Mr. Gerhardt also comes from Keith. And it wasn't even stable testimony. His initial testimony was that he believed that he was getting Demiah. And I'm pointing here again because this is what Keith testified to. His testimony was that he believed he was getting Demiah to come over to this residence so that Wayne and Demiah could drink and smoke together. That's what he testified to. Now, Mr. Durrett, during the direct examination, kind of pressed him on that issue. And finally, after a couple of questions, got him to agree that there might be sex involved. Then I came up on cross-examination. I asked him about that again, and Keith says he never said that. He just invited her over there to drink and smoke. No motive for Waymore Gerhardt. No motive at all for the killing of Demiah Appling on his part. Dylan, as you may recall, agreed when I asked him that he had never told the same story twice in this case. Throughout the entire case, he has never told the same story. First, he didn't know anything about it. Then somebody told him where the body was. Then later on, it wasn't until we had a Perry Mason moment, right? I don't know if anybody remembers Perry Mason. But back in the old days, Perry Mason used to have court cases and somebody would stand up in the back and say, "It was me." And we had a bit of a Perry Mason moment when he had some testimony that was given on the stand for the first time. He'd been talked to 6 or 7 times previous to that. And he had changed his testimony to something he'd never testified to before. Oh, Wayne took me out there. What is his motivation to do that? You think it might have something to do with him trying to cast blame elsewhere and away from him, maybe get the cops off his back? Think that might be a little bit of Keith's motivation? Where'd all these kids go after this happened in the gardens back in 2022? Are any of them still living there? No. Keith's off in St. Augustine. Dylan's gone to Georgia. Max has gone to Georgia. Everybody decided that, I was involved in something that was bad. I need to flee the scene. I've got a consciousness of guilt. I'm going to move elsewhere. And you heard Keith tell you about what a dangerous place that the gardens was, that he'd seen Demiah riding around in a golf cart doing meth with one of the people there. It's not to impugn her. 14, you don't make a whole lot of decisions on your own. You make some, but not most of them. It's a product of the environment. But I tell you that because when Mr. Durrett inevitably gets up here during his rebuttal and tells you who else would have done this, there are plenty of answers out there. Plenty of them. The gardens itself are a suspect in this case. And let's not forget Alex Kuznicki. He's the one who had the residents closest to where they found Demiah's body, right? You saw the map. You can look at it again when you go in the jury room. He's the one that lives in Bell right down the road. Phone records were never pulled. DNA never run. Who knows what involvement he had? There's no location data on him. All we have is his word that he had nothing to do with it. We'll never know. We will never know because we failed to find out. Let's talk about the gun. And I'm going to go, actually, wait, no, I want to talk about one other thing that Mr. Thomas said in his closing argument that I thought was very interesting. Because remember that what he says is not testimony. You have to rely on what you hear out of the chair. And he gives this detailed account of all this social media stuff, all these text messages and all this, right up until Demiah gets in the car with somebody. Text messages don't say it's Wayne, okay? That's not what her text messages say at all. Read them. They're right here. And then he says, let's skip ahead, right? Because there's a big old blank spot right there in what happened. And then he fills in this narrative of what he thinks happened during the next hour. But there is zero evidence about what happened during that hour. None at all. There are a couple of location blips, and we're going to get to the electronic data last. But there is no testimony at all about what happened during that hour. Only the guesses of Mr. Thomas. Now, we've talked a lot about this gun. And I think we've all managed at this point to dramatically pull it out of the box at some point. Oh, it's weird. Good. I don't have to pull it out of the box anymore. Just lean it against the wall. Not going to point it at anybody. I want to show you the gun because I want to talk a little bit about the DNA that was on this gun. I find it extremely interesting that the portions of this gun that were swabbed for DNA were the barrel, the stock, and the trigger. Demiah Appling's DNA was not anywhere on the gun, and I think that fits the state's fixed theory of the case. So we know she wasn't any of the unknown DNA on here. But on this style of long gun, who in the world would not swab the bolt, the chamber, and this particularly, I think you heard Miss Ritchie explain that once you got around chamber, think it's called the bolt cock. You got to pull that back in order to fire the gun. Can you imagine doing DNA testing on this gun and never swapping that? It's a failure by FBLE. I asked Richie about that. She's like, oh, I'm not a DNA expert. You don't have to be a DNA expert. You might need to be a common sense expert to swab the bolt cock, but you don't need to be a DNA expert. And you got to put a fair amount of pull in that bolt cock to get it back. I'm not going to dry fire this. Got to put a little bit of effort into that bolt, operate the bolt. You saw a demonstration on Mr. Thomas about how long it took to operate that bolt and pull it back, chamber the round. Don't you think that whoever's hand that was making a whole bunch of contact all over that? Would you like to have known who chambered that round? That would have been a good piece of evidence. It's a failure. It's a failure in this case. But the one piece of evidence that we do have, is about the swabbings on this trigger guard and the trigger. You heard from Ms. Hatcher that the DNA was a mixture of 3 individuals. She told you that 2 of those individuals were expected because they were the ones who owned the gun. Max Lyons and Waymore Gerhardt. It was found in their house. Despite the fact that Barsha overlooked it 3 times, it was still found. Okay? Third person has never been identified. It's probably not Garth Brooks, but we don't know who it is. Somebody from the Gardens. Mr. Thomas's argument is emblematic of the failure of this investigation. They had their man, and at some point, they just gave up on it. I don't know when that was, but they gave up. So let's talk about a little bit about that electronic data. Mr. Hoyle testified about cell phone records and about making all these plot maps and such, putting individuals at various locations at various times during the pendency of all this. This was done because the witnesses that they had in this case were unreliable, right? We heard about people that are on probation, people that have changed their stories repeatedly, people that are letting 14-year-olds sleep with each other. I mean, I don't, all of the testimony here from the non-law enforcement officers came across as being tainted. But can we rely on the law enforcement officers? Sometimes we can, but Mr. Hoyle testified when he was going through his cross-examination with Mr. Proling. First, he was testifying, every single data point made it into my map. Every one of those data, I plotted it point by point as it went through. And it wasn't until we got to the crucial portion of that map, the part where the state claims is when Mr. Gerhardt was at the burial site, claims that he was burying Demiah at that point. Suddenly there's a big old gap in all those data points. There are 14 points that he admitted that hadn't been plotted on there because he had filtered them out because they didn't agree with the state's theory of the case. I suggest to you that calls into question the remainder of the data prepared by Mr. Hoyle. I am not a Duke graduate. I am not a materials engineer. I did not spend 2 years at Florida in the material science program getting a master's degree. So I can't go through those records and find every inconsistency. But what I can tell you is that he finally admitted, just after a cursory examination, to having left some of the data out. And I don't know why you would do that. I don't know why you would try and have Barsha testify. I don't know why Mr. Thomas would testify if this is a slam dunk case. That makes no sense. If you've got beyond a reasonable doubt, why do you need those things? You don't. You absolutely do not. So there is a failure in this case to preserve the evidence. You recall that Mr. Hoyle said that one of the reasons they didn't have as much electronic data as they otherwise would, you remember what it was? It was because she wasn't reported for 9 days after she went missing. And by that time, all the cell phone providers had deleted much of the electronic data that you heard Lieutenant LaPresto, I can still remember him, electronic data. He says it about 30 times in there. Unpreserved, deleted. The next failure was a failure by Hoyle to do a good and thorough job. I think he could have probably explained, as the state is going to try and explain, why those dots bounce all over. I think I talked to everybody about how long they lived in Dixie County. If you've lived in Dixie County and have been in and around this area of Florida, you know that cell service is sometimes like, you can't get anything. I mean, that's just a fact of life. But instead of just explaining that and saying, hey, look, this particular spot wasn't covered, he left the data out. That's insulting to you, because he doesn't think that you understand that information. They never produced a motive. They never produced a witness that would say that Demiah Appling was killed by Mr. Gerhardt. They never produced a murder scene. Now they're going to get up here and they're going to tell you that they have this one point out in the Yellow Jacket Reservoir, that's where they think, and I stress the word think, that the murder occurred. Did you hear any testimony about them going out and looking for evidence out there? I didn't. Failed to identify the DNA on the gun. They failed to prove that the gun is tied to the murder. Richie said it shared class characteristics. Then, when I talked to her in cross-examination, she admitted that the class characteristic it primarily shared was that it had 6 of the, I think she called them ridges, in the rifling of the gun. She said there were 6. And she admits that that number, 6, is the most common for 22 long barrel guns. 22 is a very common kind of gun, period. That's a gun that a lot of people have owned, shot. Probably some of you own 22s. And my point is that all we know is that there was a 22 long rifle at that residence, and we know that a 22 bullet was what killed Demiah. We don't know what 22. We don't know what 22. I think that they have done a good job of proving that at some point after her murder, Mr. Gerhardt got involved. And I told you this in opening statement. Clearly, there is some blood in Mr. Lyons' car. He's heard talking about it on text messages. Says he cleaned it up. Told Max he was going to do that. Offered some explanation for how it got there. But out of all of that, there has never been an admission by anyone for killing her. They haven't proven that. They certainly haven't proven that somebody premeditated killed her, made a plan to kill her. Even Keith said that when he lured her over there, he wasn't luring her over there to kill her. But when I tell you that we failed Demiah, it's not because of the fact that she had turned to some things that I think are unhealthy for any 14-year-old girl. It's not because she's not a human. She is a human. She deserves dignity. But she also deserves a jury that's going to find and kill her. That person hasn't been put on trial here today at all. I ask that you find Mr. Gerhardt not guilty in count 1 of the indictment and guilty of tampering with evidence in count 2 of the indictment. He clearly did that. You heard testimony about that. But when you're deliberating back there, think about what proof there is that he actually killed her. Think about that. Not about what Mr. Thomas said or what Miss Barsha said, but what the actual proof is. Think about that unidentified DNA. Think about skipping ahead because we don't have any data about what happened. I ask that you find him not guilty. Thank you.
I think what I want to do is I want to take you inside the courtroom now, because when they stand, that means the jury is in. Let's go inside that courtroom.
Great, thank you. If you will hand the verdict form to our bailiff. All right, Mr. Gerhardt, if you will stand up and the clerk will publish the verdict.
The Circuit Court of the Third Judicial Circuit in and for Dixie County, Florida. Case number DI-2023-19-CF-A. State of Florida versus Waymore Gerhardt, defendant. Verdict of the jury. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. As to count 1 of the indictment, which charges first-degree murder, A, the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. We, the jury, further find the defendant discharged the firearm, causing the death of Demiah Appling. As to count 2 of the indictment, which charges tampering with evidence, A, the defendant is guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated at Dixie County, Florida, this 13th day of February, 2026, signed for person.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You may be seated. Does anyone wish to poll the jury?
We're going to leave the question poll the jury.
Yes, okay. Do you mind polling the jury? Ladies and gentlemen, what this means is that our clerk will ask you individually if this is in fact your verdict. You'll just need to answer out loud.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ms. Lynn?
All right, so Waymore Gerhardt found guilty of all charges. He was facing 2 charges, first-degree murder. They also found an aggravator there with the discharge of a firearm and also tampering with evidence. As you remember, the defense basically conceded that. They conceded that he helped to bury the body, but were again claiming that he was not the one responsible for the murder of Demiah. Let's bring back in Alexis Rosenberg, trial attorney, joining us this hour. Alexis, quickly, I want to get your reaction to the verdict.
Well, no surprise, right? And I'm not so sure he's so surprised either. As he was standing there, it kind of looked like he knew what was coming, that his attorneys had advised him that was most likely going to be the verdict.
Do you think they even had to advise him? I mean, he sat there throughout the trial. He knows what he did. Essentially, the car that he was driving had her blood in the back. He lied to folks about it. He almost basically admitted it to police in an interview. All right, looks like the judge is talking. I want to take you back live to the courtroom.
Anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. You also have a 1-year free pass. So if you get another jury summons within the next 12 months, you can simply call the clerk or remind the clerk's office that you did, in fact, already served your duty recently, and you have a 12-month free pass. That also pertains to our alternates out there, and all 3 alternates stuck around. We appreciate that. But unless you guys have any questions for us, for me, we greatly appreciate your time and commitment to this case, and you are discharged, and we thank you. You just leave your badges on the table or on the seat there. Anywhere will be fine. We'll grab them.
All right, so again, you see there Waymore Gerhardt talking to his attorney, whispering, she whispering to him, he whispering to her. He now faces life in prison, of course, without the possibility of parole. This is one of those cases, Alexis, and again, still with us, trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. This is one of those cases where it always felt like what we call a long walk or a slow walk to a guilty verdict, right? Because essentially, this is one you thought might have pled out, but they chose not to plead out, probably because there were no offers forthcoming. So you basically go through the motions and you get your guilty verdict.
I agree. There probably was not a plea on the table. I mean, they had a lot of evidence against him, so I doubt that they offered anything. And also, you always take into consideration the prosecution will also ask the victim's family what they want to happen as well. I mean, this was egregious. You know, the victim was so young, how the situation, came about, the sex with the victim, the acknowledgement of that, and just how she ultimately died. If I was the prosecutor, I wouldn't have offered anything either.
Before we turn our eyes over to New Jersey and go to the Canero case, I just want to mention, I want to get your thoughts on one of the things that the defense mentioned in their opening statement, and the prosecution alluded to it as well, was how many people failed the victim in this case. This young girl, 14 years old, she was living with her grandmother. At so many steps, she was involved in drugs. And again, I mentioned some of the other things she was doing. Just mention, again, I don't want to forget, the victim in this case, this young girl. We're looking at pictures of her doing things that young women do, but yet because of the way the situation she was living in and folks failing her at a number of levels, she was forced into this lifestyle that sort of led her to a bad place.
It's very, very sad. I mean, we have a 14-year-old, and we don't, Michael, you're right, we don't want to forget the victim because it's tragic. It sounds like there were a lot of tragedies that were going on in her life, but for the situation, maybe she would not have been there with that person. However, the bottom line is she did not deserve to be murdered, even if she had placed herself for whatever reason in those situations.
And I'll never forget, part of the testimony was one of her good friends, Keith, talked about the fact that she had this weird feeling about Waymore. So her instincts were still intact, so they had to kind of come up with this ruse to get her in a room alone with him. So it's just a shame all the way around.
Defense have any witnesses to present?
Your Honor, Mr. Gerhardt wishes to be heard. Over counsel's advice.
Okay, Mr. Gerhardt, you're under oath still from earlier this morning. Pull that mic up close to you. And you can provide your comments.
It's not on.
Yeah, it's a.
This is my first time in court, Your Honor. I don't know if there's any restrictions or anything on what I'm allowed to say or what I should say, but I just want to maintain my innocence on first-degree murder, but say that I fully understand the jury's conviction. I hold no grudge against none of them. I fully understand Demiah Appling's grandmother and her statement up there. I absolutely understand why she hates me. I have been the one person the media has put there in her line of sight for her to blame for her granddaughter's death. And I don't blame her one bit for hating me because they blame me for it. And if I was in her position, I would hate me too, because I would have no one else to blame. And I just wanted that on the record because I wanted everybody to know I hold no ill will towards that lady. And this is a terrible tragedy that happened to her granddaughter. But I still want to maintain my innocence, even though this ain't going to help me. I've been advised by Mr. Robert Baker. This is not a extra plea for mercy or a plea of my innocence. This is just a part of my statement. I'm not guilty of first-degree murder. But I absolutely understand that people will look at me that way. That's all I have to say. Oh, and I like to say that anything evidence-wise or anything that's ever happened in this case should be focused on me. My mother is a good woman. No matter what choices I ever make in life, my mother is not responsible for those choices that I make. So I would ask everybody to sort of not hate on my mother for anything that goes on in this courtroom or in my life or any crime I ever commit. The woman has nothing to do with any of this. That's all, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anything else to add, Mr. Baker?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Recommendations as to sentencing.
Recommendations as to sentencing, Your Honor. Mandatory sentence as to count one. State asks that you impose that sentence. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. We would ask that you impose 5 years concurrent DOC as it relates to the tampering with evidence, count number 2. And jail credit would be since his arrest on
January 11th, 2023.
January 11th, 2023. Jail credit going back to that date.
Any special costs? We have the 418 in court costs, $50 PD application fee, any other cost or fines?
Standard $100 cost of prosecution, Your Honor.
Okay, no additional cost of investigation?
We have, but we're not seeking imposition of a lien.
Understood.
Your Honor, one request that Mr. Gerhardt has indicated to me, apparently Demiah's father is incarcerated in the Department of Corrections right now at the North Florida Reception Center in Lake Butler. And apparently, as he's been told in the intake area there, he is requesting that he be sent to a different reception center. I don't know if the court has that ability. I've been told that courts have limited ability to direct Department of Corrections to do anything in particular, but my client has made that request, and I'm making that plea to the court.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Gerhardt, as it relates to count 1, the indictment, first-degree murder, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers, by sentenced to life without parole. As to count 1, you are adjudicated guilty. As to counts 1 and 2, count 2, the tampering with evidence, third-degree felony, punishable by 5 years DOC. You are sentenced to 5 years in the Department of Corrections, run concurrent with the count 1 life sentence. Again, you're adjudicated guilty as to each count. $100 cost of prosecution, $418 in court costs, $50 public defender application fee. You are entitled to jail credit calculated from January the 11th, 2023 through today, February 13th, 2026. And you do have 30 days to appeal the judgment and sentence of this court. Otherwise, you remain back to the Dixie County Sheriff's Office for fingerprinting and processing to the Department of Corrections.
And Your Honor, we would ask to be appointed for purposes of the appeal.
Okay, I'll appoint the Regional Conflict Counsel.
Yes, sir. And we'll submit an order to the court for that effect.
I'll get it signed right away.
Thank you.
Anything else for the record?
True crime just got darker. Catch the full episode on the link above. Subscribe to Southern Sin today and hit the notification bell for more live original episodes Wednesdays at 8 p.m.